Imagine a truck designed to survive a nuclear apocalypse, yet one that almost fell victim to absurd Soviet bureaucracy. Meet the Ural-375, a multi-ton machine that simply did not care about the absence of roads, the depth of rivers, or fuel economy. To understand what the Ural-375 is, imagine the iconic American M35 truck, known as the Deuce and a Half, but built for conditions where roads don't exist at all, and temperatures swing from 104 degrees Fahrenheit in the desert to minus 58 degrees in the Siberian taiga. The story of this rugged machine begins in the mid-1950s in Mias, a city deep in Russia's Ural Mountains. The Soviet Army demanded a new all-wheel drive heavy artillery tractor. The leadership decided to build it from scratch, far behind the lines. The bitter experience of World War II had taught them to keep strategic defense plants as far from Western borders as possible. The real fun began when Soviet generals presented their survival requirements. At the height of the Cold War, they were preparing for nuclear strikes. Engineers were ordered to give the truck a canvas roof and a fold-down windshield. Why? So the vehicle could be hidden in a deep trench from the shock wave of a nuclear blast. Take down the roof, and the truck instantly became nearly 3 feet lower. Another extreme demand was deep-water fording. The plan was for the Ural to calmly drive through water nearly 6 feet deep. The water would literally reach the driver's neck, so the engine and all components had to be hermetically sealed. But during lake trials, an embarrassing mishap occurred. The sealed cabin acted like a giant float. The massive 8-ton military monster simply lifted off the bottom and floated downstream. They barely managed to catch it with a tow cable. After that, the military quietly reduced the wading depth requirements. The path to the assembly line was filled with typical Soviet drama. The massive 7-liter V8 engine came from another state-owned giant in Moscow. Ironically, this brutal monster had a surprisingly aristocratic heart. Its engine was originally developed for luxury government limousines, the kind used by the Soviet elite and Fidel Castro. But what worked well for parades in Moscow became a nightmare in the Ural mud. Local engineers had to modify these limo engines to run underwater. The Moscow factory got offended and voided all warranties. The Communist Party had to intervene at the highest level, slamming their fists on the table to force the two factories to cooperate. Full-scale production started in 1965. By then, the military realized that radioactive dust was much worse than a shockwave, so they brought back standard metal cabins. As for comfort, that word was unknown to the designers. The roar of the massive V8 was so deafening that you had to scream inside the cabin. In the summer, the engine radiated so much heat that drivers joked they were driving a sauna on wheels. But this Spartan design had one massive advantage: repairability. The Ural had zero electronics, no microchips or complex sensors. The Soviet engineering philosophy assumed that if the truck broke down in the middle of the Siberian taiga or the Afghan mountains, the driver should be able to fix it with a standard wrench, a hammer, and a rich arsenal of profanity. All the discomfort was forgiven once the truck hit off-road terrain. The Ural-375 had a centralized tire inflation system. The driver could change tire pressure right from the cabin. Facing an impassable swamp, just deflate the tires until they are flat, and the truck crawls through the mud like a tank on tracks. The powerful compressor even let you keep driving if a tire was shot. It pumped air in faster than it could escape through a bullet hole. Thanks to this capability, the truck became a global hit. It was the first chassis for the legendary BM-21 Grad multiple rocket launcher. These trucks became the calling card of Soviet intervention worldwide, rolling through the sands of the Middle East, the jungles of Vietnam, and the savannas of Angola, becoming silent witnesses to countless Cold War proxy conflicts. There was just one catch: an unbelievable appetite for fuel. This giant burned up to 50 liters of gasoline per 100 kilometers. That's roughly 4.7 miles per gallon. Drivers joked that its aerodynamics resembled a brick, and if you stood next to it at a gas station, you could actually hear it gulping fuel. But in the USSR, gas cost pennies, and the army didn't bother counting it. During the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in the 1980s, however, this gasoline monster showed its fatal flaw. In the mountains, these trucks were the main supply vehicles. But in ambushes, the massive gas tanks would erupt into fireballs from the slightest bullet impact. Soviet soldiers bitterly nicknamed them lighters. Because of this, the army began switching to safer diesel versions. You might think that in the 21st century, the only place left for this gasoline dinosaur is a museum. And while many people in the West actually know its descendants well, if you've ever played off-road simulators like Mud Runner or Snow Runner, you've definitely churned virtual mud in these machines. In the real world, history took a bloody and ironic turn. During the full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, the Russian army began rapidly losing its modern logistical equipment. To compensate, Russian commanders started pulling those exact same old, rusty, gasoline-powered Ural-375s out of deep storage and sending them to the front lines. In the conditions of modern warfare, this turned into a catastrophe. Its main flaw from the Afghan war hasn't gone anywhere. The massive gas tanks instantly catch fire from strikes by cheap Ukrainian FPV drones, creating bright fireballs across the Ukrainian steppes. Over 30 years, more than 110,000 of these trucks were built. The Ural-375 goes down in history as a symbol of Soviet engineering brutality and an era when machines were prepped for a nuclear winter. But as time has shown, their actual end of the world didn't come from NATO missiles, but from Ukrainian artillery and small commercial drones.